Hi everyone, welcome to another Conservation Week video hosted by the Chippewa Luce Mackinac Conservation District. I'm the Forester. My name's Dylan. I'm going to go over a few of the commonly asked questions that I get, as well as a few scenarios that I pretty consistently run into. The first and most common question that I get, it's what's killing my tree? This summer, as things were starting to green up a little bit, everybody was noticing that a few of the yard trees, maybe a few trees in their woods, they just weren't looking as healthy as they should have been. The most common one that I was seeing was either flooding or drought or a combination of both. When the tree is exposed to these kind of stressors, it can weaken it, and then it exposes it to other sort of um, pathogens and stuff that can kill the tree, stuff that it wouldn't otherwise die from. But this spring, um, lots of flooding accompanied with a few dry spells here and there kind of led to quite a few deaths of trees and a lot of dieback in some of them. The other common one was spruce budworm. Around here, all of our spruces and balsams, they were getting hit pretty hard. So that's a small little caterpillar looking guy. It eats the new growth on the trees, and then it cocoons and forms moths. So you might notice some browning in the needles on the tips of the trees, and some defoliation, and then later on in the early summer, and you'll start to notice some webs and maybe even some cocoons that are on the ends of the branches on the spruce trees and the balsams, and that's just it's a natural pest. It's been around. It goes in cycles, and unfortunately, there isn't much to do about it. It mainly affects the older trees and the ones that are already stressed. So keeping your tree healthy is important. A lot of the other ones were case by case basis, kind of going out and looking at the tree. Maybe I couldn't figure it out from pictures or over the phone. So um, going out and trying to do a little bit of um, detective work to see what killed the tree or is making it sick. That was kind of part of what I was doing this spring. Um, Another commonly asked question that I get is, what can I do to help my forest? We all have forests that we know of, or small woodlots, or even large forests. We all want to help them be healthy and continue to grow and be a nice asset for us in the future for recreation and hunting and all the other uses that we have for our forests. And the number one thing that you can do is have a visit done by a forester, someone like myself or a consulting forester. They serve as a good point of contact because they can give you some good insight as to like your specific forest type and maybe some different activities that you can do to help promote your forest, as well as some long-term goals. Kind of putting some goals down on paper is a good way of getting started. Kind of visualizing where you want to go with your forest and some of the different ways to use your forest. These are all things that kind of fall into the realm of a management plan. Something like that would be done by a consulting forester. And they're an excellent tool to help manage your forest and to continue the legacy of forest management into the future. The other way of ensuring that your forest stays healthy is to do a periodic check-in once or twice a year at minimum, taking a walk around and making sure that everything looks to be healthy and that there isn't anything that really stands out. You don't have to be an expert to do this. Just if you're walking around and you notice something is popping up, maybe it's whole bunch of clumps of mushrooms, or it's a big pocket of dead trees. Something that just kind of stands out. Maybe you could call and ask someone what it was if you couldn't Google it, and maybe it's nothing, but maybe it's a serious issue that should be addressed. Another question that I was commonly getting is what kind of tree should I plant? A lot of these were going to be planted in yards, but some of them were in a forest setting. Maybe they had a little opening and they wanted to put a few trees in. So it's really based on the site. A few things to consider are the soil, how much moisture that's getting, and when it's getting the moisture, as well as the amount of sun. Around here, there's a lot of clay and a lot of sand. You can't plant a lot of the trees that you can plant on sand and the clay, and you can't plant a lot of the trees you'd plant in the clay and the sand. That's real based on the tree's characteristics. It's kind of defines where you can and can't plant them. It's the drainage characteristics of the soil mainly. Some of them don't like to be wet for too long, and some of them need the excess moisture. So then considering that, it'd be wise to look into the different traits of the tree. For example, it would be Norway spruce and tamarack do very well on the clay soils, whereas red pine does well on the sandy soils. Kind of knowing those things, knowing who to talk to, and then kind of a little bit of information on your site characteristics goes a long way in helping to have successful planting of your trees. The next question that I get is fairly common, and it's a bit of a scenario where a landowner is approached by a logger, and the logger makes them an offer on their forest, on their trees, on their standing timber, and they want to know if they should take this offer. And a little bit of advice for anyone that might find themselves in that position is that you should always use a contract. Contract provides a lot of security for you and mitigates a lot of the risk. And it's also important to make sure that there's everything in the contract that should be there. That's where the role of a forester comes in. A lot of foresters will draw up their own contracts, and having someone that's reliable that's looking out for you is important here. So they make sure that all the little details are checked. Anything that's been ran into in the past, and maybe they got burned on it, maybe stuff that they even haven't. They just have heard stories and they know it should be in there, just to be safe. That's when a consulting forester comes in handy for all of these things. It's a lot of insurance for that, and also they're going to be the ones that are on site watching the logger to make sure that they're taking the trees that they're supposed to, doing the right type of management here, and they're not going to be destroying your property and leaving it a mess. So if you're approached by a logger and they make you an offer on your standing timber, the wise decision here would be to consider working with a forester, and always make sure that you have a contract in place. So will spell out the specifics of the harvest. Moving on to the next question that I was getting quite a bit is, can I dig a pond here? Everybody wants to have a pond, whether it's for their visual pleasure, maybe it's for a few fish, or even for the wildlife, having a wildlife pond that's only a few inches deep. To be sure of all the regulations, it's always best to call Eagle, formerly DEQ. They can help you with all the different regulations. Sometimes it's pretty simple and straightforward, and you don't have to worry about a whole lot. Other times you're going to have to get a permit, and even more often you're not going to be able to dig a pond there without a whole process to get through. So if you're going through a contractor, a lot of them they already know the process, but having a phone call to Eagle, that'd be a good place to start to make sure that you can dig a pond where you're thinking about doing it. The next question, final question I'm going to cover is how can I improve my deer hunting? That's the question everybody in the Eastern UP wants to know. There's the deer rely on the forest, and there's a whole suite of different options that you can do to improve deer hunting. Nothing's going to guarantee that you're going to have the monster buck walk across your shooting lane on opening morning, but there's a lot of things you can do that will help. Making sure that everything that they need is there. So they need food, cover, and water all throughout the year. And since a lot of the deer are migratory, making sure that they feel safe in the area that you're hunting at the time that they're going to be there, that's a pretty common thing, as well as maintaining their winter cover, all of our conifers, the hemlocks and cedars specifically. That's a big food source, as well as providing a little bit of thermal cover against the cold. That all those things help to improve the deer population, as well as kind of keep them around and lead them to where you want to hunt. Having that food source where you know where it is, that's a pretty common thing. So if to improve it, making some openings to encourage new species, and in addition to that, maybe putting in some new species, some mass producing ones, so oaks and maybe some apple trees as well. Everybody thinks of oaks and apples as being optimum deer feed. They obviously take a while to start producing, so you're not going to see results from that right away, but down the road, someone is going to appreciate that effort that went into it. So that's all the questions that I was going to cover. If you have any more, feel free to contact the Conservation District. I'm Dylan Parker.